And now, let's join ace broadcaster Mamode Akugha as he takes us inside the Niger Delta.
Hello out there and welcome to the program. It's Inside the Niger Delta, the authentic voice of Nigeria's oil-rich region. I'm your regular host, Mamode Akugha. On our lineup for today's package is a lead story on measures taken so far by state governments in the Niger Delta region to combat the menace of COVID-19, which is now a major source of concern for the entire country and the rest of the world. The COVID-19 pandemic has equally taken a huge toll on the Nigerian economy. As the price of crude oil, the country's economic mainstay, nosedives in the international market. Given the economic realities on ground, our second report in today's package is centered on the federal government's fuel subsidy that is generally considered a major drain pipe in the economy. Inside the Niger Delta, the authentic voice of Nigeria's oil-rich region will be back after this timeout. Don't go away.
Introducing the new face of the Nigerian Maritime Administration and Safety Agency, NIMASA. We are charting the direction for a maritime and regulating the industry for a better, bigger, and more economically stable Nigeria. Evolved to serve you better. We are NIMASA. New face, rejuvenated service. NIMASA. Changing the tides in your favor.
Welcome back. It's Inside the Niger Delta, the authentic voice of Nigeria's oil-rich region. State governments in the Niger Delta are taking more measures to contain the deadly coronavirus disease, which has been on the increase across the country. This report, correspondent Ekena Biofori takes a look at strategies deployed by individual state governments to prevent the spread of COVID-19.
With confirmed cases of COVID-19 in more than half of Nigeria's 36 states, state governments in the Niger Delta are unrelenting in the fight against the deadly virus. In Bayelsa State, Governor Doye Diri recently signed an executive order for the temporary closure of markets. In line with the COVID-19 lockdown, all social activities and religious gatherings have been halted in Bayelsa State.
Our lockdown was not total, but interstate movements still remains banned, and our borders, both our maritime domain and our land borders, remain closed to our sister states.
After it recorded 5 cases of COVID-19 confirmed by the Nigeria Center for Disease Control, Akwa Ibom State had taken decisive measures to prevent its spread. Earlier in the month of April, Governor Udom Emmanuel had ordered a 14-day lockdown of Akwa Ibom State. He said his government was not deterred by the threat of the pandemic.
This is not the time to panic or spread fear. This is the time to strengthen our faith. All hands must be on deck to defeat this pandemic in our state, in our nation Nigeria, and the entire world. What we need to do is to stay at home, practice social distancing and good personal hygiene, provide accurate and useful information to health workers whenever necessary.
At the time of filing in this report, Delta State had 3 confirmed cases of coronavirus. To prevent a possible spread of the scourge, Governor Ifeanyi Okowa had reaffirmed his directive on the lockdown of Delta State. To this end, a mobile court had been set up to enforce restriction on movement along the boundaries of the state.
The lockdown order was given because it was necessary. It is also lawful because I've already signed into law a regulation which empowers us to take actions against those who would disobey the lockdown order.
In Edo State, where no fewer than 11 COVID-19 cases had been confirmed, the government was yet to enforce restrictions on commercial activities. The ambience in Benin City, the Edo State capital, was the usual hustle and bustle as residents went about their businesses unhindered.
As a result of these developments, we have to now adopt more stringent measures while still trying to protect the livelihoods of our people. Edo State government is very reluctant to have a total shutdown of the state because of the hardship it will cause to our people.
Like his Edo State counterpart, Governor Ben Ayade had refused to enforce a COVID-19 lockdown in Cross River State. He said if armed with personal protective equipment, Cross Riverians would stand no risk of contracting the virus.
But the protection of life without the protection of livelihood is a complete imbalance. A social cataclysm will come therefrom. I do not believe in shutting down my state. I shut down the borders, protect my state, and allow businesses to thrive in my state. I know that once you put on this mask, you already have been protected. You don't need social distancing when you are properly protected.
Perhaps in no other part of the Niger Delta has a COVID-19 scare generated as much tension as it has done in Rivers State. On Saturday, 4th April 2020, Governor Wike and security chiefs in Rivers State, acting on intelligence report, stormed the Nigerian Air Force Base in Port Harcourt to arrest 2 pilots of Coverton Helicopters, a logistics company providing support services for oil and gas companies in Nigeria. The pilots and 10 crew members were subsequently arraigned before a Port Harcourt magistrate court and sentenced for violating the COVID-19 lockdown order prohibiting travel to and from Rivers State.
The highly insensitive and provocative actions of Coverton Helicopters took place in the midst of credible intelligence reports about plans by enemies to traffic carriers of the disease of the dreaded coronavirus into the state. Their morbid intention is to create panic by pushing up the infection rate and rubbish the robust measures we have since put in place to cut off the spread of the virus and keep our state and our citizens safe and secure from the ravaging pandemic.
Governor Wike's action was immediately condemned by Aviation Minister Senator Hadi Sirika, who said the pilots obtained permission from the federal government to fly.
We had the authority, and being it exclusively on the exclusive list, and we had the powers in civil aviation, guided by Civil Aviation Act 2006, approved such flights. So those flights were approved lawfully, legally, and correct.
Other bodies such as the National Association of Aircraft Pilots and Engineers, as well as the Aviation Safety Roundtable Initiative, had joined the fray. They threatened to stop all local and international flights into Rivers State at the recession of COVID-19 should the governor fail to order an immediate release of their detained colleagues and apologize for his actions. Unruffled by the position of his critics, Governor Wike later declared Coverton Helicopters a persona non grata in Rivers State, insisting that lives must be protected in the state. What many now refer to as a COVID-19 drama playing out in Rivers State continues to generate reactions from interested parties.
The governor has done what he has done. One, he did not consider the use of Niger Delta, Rivers State, working with Coverton Air. I think the governor of Rivers State acted in error, serious breach of error. Probably he's not happy with the way the federal government is working with Lagos government to cope the menace of COVID-19.
I can assure you that somebody somewhere made a terrible mistake which they do not want to own up. If they have any special assignment they are to carry, the first port of call would have been the governor of that state and said, Mr. Governor, this is what we want to do. This is the status of the people that we are sending to the state. We can send the certificate to you. And I believe with the governor, with his nature, it would have even announced that to Rivers people.
The federal government and the state government ought to be on the same page. If actually we are determined and we are sincere in fighting the scourge of COVID-19.
The COVID-19 conflict between Rivers State and federal authorities is commonplace in intergovernmental relations. Most observers look up to both parties, therefore, to sink their differences and unite against a pandemic that can only be defeated through collective efforts.
Inside the Niger Delta.
I'm 10 years Jack Rich, Sarkin Run Hausa, and I approve this message.
Everybody wash your hands well with soap and water well. Make we use sanitizer well. And and stay for our house. Well, Engineer Jack Rich say, make we support the government to fight coronavirus to stay alive. Oh. My people, coronavirus no be scam. Oh. Anybody fit get am. Make we stay safe, avoid crowd, wash our hand for at least 20 seconds for water where they run. Make we no near each other too much. If your body or any person body around you they overhot, they cough anyhow or no they breathe normal, make una rush to the nearest health center for checkup. Make we no fear, because fear fit make our body weak to fight against this virus. Stay safe. Second one house. Engineer Jack Rich, so make we fight coronavirus to stay alive. Oh. This message now from Engineer Jack Rich Jr., Second Ruwan Hausa, President and Founder, Belema Oil.
The halt on fuel subsidy, as announced recently by Group Managing Director of the Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation (NNPC), Malam Mele Kyari, has been described as long overdue. In their reaction, some economists and stakeholders in the petroleum industry have underscored an urgent need to fully deregulate the petroleum downstream sector and allow market forces to determine the price of petroleum products in the country.
The federal government appears to have finally acceded to demands by several groups within and outside the country on the need to jettison its fuel subsidy policy. According to the Group Managing Director of the Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation, NNPC, the era of fuel subsidy is gone forever. Mele Kyari, who was speaking on a TV program, Moneyline with Nancy, said henceforth there will be no resort to either subsidy or under recovery of any nature.
Subsidy is zero. There's no subsidy. It's zero forever. Going forward, there will be no resort to either subsidy or under recovery of any nature. NNPC will play in the marketplace. We will just be another marketer in the space, but will be there for the country to sustain security of supply, which will also be at the cost of the market.
The subsidy regime was introduced in Nigeria following the inability of Nigeria's 4 refineries to produce at installed capacity. The government of then military President Ibrahim Babangida announced a fuel subsidy policy to subsidize the huge cost of fuel importation for Nigerians. Soon after its introduction, it turned out to be a colossal economic drainpipe in the country. For instance, the federal government spent over 1.5 trillion naira on fuel subsidy between 2018 and 2019. Sadly, however, businessmen and women with government connections became the real beneficiaries of the fuel subsidy policy. They had devised a strategy of buying refined petroleum products from local refiners at giveaway prices, only to deliver same products to the government at officially approved prices.
Although up till now, I don't know how much I'm supposed to pay for a liter of fuel and how much government is paying extra to subsidize me. But all we know is that government is paying some money to some marketers, as subsidy. And that has really eaten deep into, government purse. So if government remove it completely and there is nothing like subsidy, I think that's the best way to go, so that this issue of talking about it over and over, and then some people just sitting down in the corner of their house bringing petroleum product, whether the quantity they bring into the country is complete or not, they collect money, from the back door as subsidy. So it is the right way to go, to remove it completely, so that we have a situation where market forces, can actually, determine both the quantity that will be demanded and the price finally.
For some Nigerians, the removal of fuel subsidy, as announced recently by Mele Kyari, should be taken with a pinch of salt for obvious reasons. First, Mele Kyari, who runs the NNPC, is not Nigeria's Minister of Petroleum and therefore not directly responsible for policy formulation in the petroleum sector. Secondly, this is not the first time the government would give an impression that subsidy has been removed for petroleum products, only for Nigerians to discover that subsidy regime was continuing. When in May 2016, the pump price of petrol was jacked from 87 naira per litre to 145 naira, the impression given by the federal government was that the fuel subsidy policy had been jettisoned. Curiously, it went ahead with a policy that enriched only a privileged few at the expense of the ordinary people.
This has been a familiar argument over the years. And therefore, when we heard about this, I naturally got worried because I know for a fact that the refineries are still not working. It is only when the refineries are working that it may seem sensible to contemplate petroleum subsidy removal entirely. Maybe government just wants to impress people the way we do here. And because they also know that nobody holds anybody to account for our statements and actions. When these statements are made, naturally, one has to take the statement with a pinch of salt.
Moreover, Mele Kyari's recent declaration on the removal of fuel subsidy contradicts an earlier position of Nigeria's finance minister, Zainab Ahmed, that the country was looking at a gradual phasing out of fuel subsidy as part of a comprehensive strategy to boost revenue generation.
We have to implement it in a manner that is both successful as well as sustainable. We are not in a situation to wake up one day and just remove subsidy. We have to educate the people. We have to show the Nigerian citizens what the replacements for those subsidies will be. So we have a lot of work to do, and we also need to understand that you don't remove subsidies large amounts in one go, that it has to be graduated, and the public has to be well informed on what you're trying to do.
Labour in the petroleum industry has also expressed their support for subsidy removal, but like the Minister of Finance, they hope its removal could be gradual.
Subsidy removal is good, but it shouldn't be in total. If the government wants to remove it, they should gradually put other infrastructures in place and gradually pull out from it. This would have been the best time.
In the midst of the confusion created by an official doublespeak on fuel subsidy, the onus is on the Petroleum Products Pricing Regulatory Agency, PPPRA, to make clarifications on the actual state of the policy. In a bid to assuage marketers who are always at the receiving end of government's back-and-forth movement of pricing of petroleum products, the federal government has decided that the PPPRA will announce the pump price of fuel every end of the month for the following month, after working out the cost based on crude oil price and other parameters. In other words, if the import price goes up, the pump price will go up and go down when import price comes down. For some Nigerians, however, what is needed in the petroleum sector is complete deregulation.
Government has no business fixing prices. That's why we don't have private refineries. Right now would be the time to deregulate. Deregulation basically is to make sure that this is the kind of refined product we use in this country, and that's what must come in. And that's what the inspection companies are certifying at the wharf. So they can come in through anywhere. Cocoa Port, Warri Port, Port Harcourt, anywhere. Calabar. And if that happens, it will drop the price drastically because nobody wants to bring a product and be paying demurrage. There will be competition. And then in that way, you scrap PPPROA and then FEP. Scrap these bodies because we don't need them. If you do that, I can tell you we can sell petrol right now, PMS for 30 or 40 naira per litre, if you do that today. But I don't know the problem with the government interest. Today is the only NPC that is importing. They are the only people paying subsidy. So how much they are using to import, we don't know. How much the subsidy is, we don't know. They are the regulators, they are the marketers, and they are the distributors. I mean, where does that happen?
Let us allow demand and supply to rule the market. Let market forces determine prices. Let every petroleum marketing company sell their products at a price that they can market and be able to attract a clientele.
The recent slump in oil prices, occasioned by the COVID-19 outbreak across the globe, has dealt a heavy blow on the Nigerian economy. In March this year, the federal government took drastic steps to reduce its oil benchmark in the 2020 budget from $57 per barrel to $30. Owing to paucity of funds to sustain the 2020 budget, the government had taken further steps to slash it by 20%. The implication of the current cash crunch is that the government can no longer fund the phony fuel subsidy scheme that has cost the country trillions of naira in just a few years. Consequently, there's a renewed move to license artisanal refineries in the Niger Delta to ensure products availability and income generation for the country. Although the federal government in 2016 promised to legalize and support operations of artisanal refineries with an establishment of modular refineries across the region, there was no meaningful attempt to drive the process to a logical conclusion until recently.
One way of doing that is to ensure that these people are also helped by some of our scientists to modernize, the refinery so that we reduce, negative externalities completely. We can also put them in cooperatives and then bring in some other people that, can invest in those, refineries. So that when the people are there, they will protect it because it's their own. They are part of, ownership. And then two, they can now produce, and refine, crude oil and give us the byproduct which we'll use to run our generators, to run our cars. And then, life will become better. They will earn income, and then the product will be available for people to consume. And if we produce excess, we can also export them outside for us to, earn foreign exchange.
One of the goals of the recent decision to integrate operations of artisanal refineries in oil production is to reduce crude oil theft, which also constitutes a major drainpipe in the Nigerian economy. Considering that local refiners depend on stolen crude to function, the federal government has been urged to devise means of addressing the root causes of economic sabotage in the Niger Delta. Despite being the largest producer of crude oil on the African continent, Nigeria has for decades depended on massive importation of petroleum products to drive our economy. While the nation's 4 refineries are left to rot away, other refineries owned and operated by privileged Nigerians in neighboring African countries have been in brisk business over the years. The scam around the fuel subsidy is said to have been perpetrated by a powerful cabal in the system that President Jonathan could not contend with when in 2012 he attempted to bring it to a halt. For President Buhari, who prior to his election expressed misgivings about the policy but later went ahead to implement it, this is an opportune moment to put a final stop to a policy that has left the Nigerian economy in dire straits.
Inside the Niger Delta.
In the meantime, a Warri-based lawyer, ALHAJI MUMAKAI UNAGHA, has called for urgent action in the cleanup of all ecologically devastated communities in the Niger Delta. To make the environmental remediation of all oil-impacted communities a reality in the shortest time possible, the one-time chairman of the Muslim Pilgrims Welfare Board in Delta State wants the federal government to expedite action on the ongoing Ogoni cleanup project.
Government should be active enough to ensure that in reality the cleaning up is done. It is not even Ogoni that is even affected with oil spillage. Go to the entire, though Ogoni is pronounced, the entire Niger Delta needs cleanup. From Robo to Isoko, Ijo, all, etc., they need cleanup as well. Because our water has been polluted, heavily polluted. Go to Ugele South. Entire vast area, no, destroyed by oil spillage. The area should be cleaned up. Our children, we cannot go to fishing any longer. We cannot get any drinking water from the river because of the high pollution. Ordinary, when there is rain, or when it rains, whatever comes from the rain, you see the black water and particles. You cannot use it to bathe, neither you drink it. So these are the problems who are associated with oil and gas exploration in the area, in the entire area.
Inside the Niger Delta.
Well, that's the size of our package on the program for today. Inside the Niger Delta, the authentic voice of Nigeria's oil-rich region, will return same time, same station next week. Until then, you can follow us on our social media handles showing right now on your screen. Until same time next week, remember to always wash your hands, maintain proper hygiene, and keep safe social distance to avoid spreading COVID-19. My name is Mamode Akugha. Thank you so much for watching, and bye for now.